What is up, guys? Randomonium here. This is your Week 4 Fantasy LCS analysis and prediction video. In this video, I'm going to break down all the matchups for NA and EU LCS. There will be spoilers in this video for previous weeks, so if you haven't watched the matches from Week 3 or earlier and you don't want them spoiled, this is your spoiler warning. But I'll go right into the tier list for this week. I did add some extra stuff this week, so this tier list is just kind of like the people who just want the quick and dirty, bottom line up front. There's more to this story. So this is basically half of what I want to show people, but I know that some people don't have time to watch the video, so this is kind of just, if you're just interested in the point values, then this is the point values. I'm also going to go into risk and reward later on, so that's something that if you guys want to watch the rest of the video, that's what I'm going to go into as we continue on. So just as far as point values are concerned, for your teams, your top teams this week are going to be Fnatic, TSM, Misfits, Cloud9, and Echo Fox. 100 Thieves, G2, and Vitality are also going to be above average. Your average teams, you're looking at Schalke, Clutch, CLG, and Splice. And then below average, you're looking at Unicorns of Love, Optic, Team Liquid, Giants, Guardians, Rockhat, H2K, and FlyQuest. Top lane, Huni is on top, immediately followed by Alfari and Licorice. You've also got Hanser and Wonder, who should do well this week. And then rounding out the above-average people, we've got Someday, Darshan, and Soaz. Average people are Vivasachi, Cabochard, Solo, and Lorlo. And then moving into the below-average, we've got Odoame, Flame, Ruin, Impact, Prophet, White Knight, Zig, and Smitty J. Moving on to Jungle, Dardock's at the top. You can see pretty much Echo Fox is at the top across the board just because of how many points they've been getting recently. Maxlor is immediately behind him. Then we've got Svenskeren, Pride, and Genko. So we've got Schalke stepping up here because they have a pretty good week this week. And then as far as the rest of the above average, we've got Mike Young, Broxa, and Meteos. So you can see also that 100 Thieves is going to have a pretty good week this week. For the rest of the average people, we've got Reignover, Lyra, Gilius, and Xerxes. And then moving into below average, we've got Contracts, Cold, Xmithy, Acadian, Joko, Memento, Shrimp, and Santorin. Not sure if Shrimp is starting this week. Also not sure if Keen's starting this week. But in either case, whoever starts, I wouldn't play them. Mid lane, we've got Phoenix in mid lane at the top, immediately followed by Jensen. Then we've got Bjergsen, Perks, and then the remainder for the above-average people would be Fevibin, Senkux, Caps, Nukeduck, and Jizuki. Average mid laners would be Huhi, Ryu, Power of Evil, and Niski. And then for below-average, we've got Blanc, Pobelter, High, Betsy, Keen, Exile, and Cadril. Moving into bot lane, Altex at the top, immediately followed by Hans Sama. We've also got Reckles and Cody Sun. And then rounding out the above average people, we've got Upset, Zven, Sneaky, Hajarn, and Kabi. Average 80 carries this week is going to be Apollo, Stixay, Minotropax, and Arrow. And then below average would be Steelback, Double Lift, Deathly, Wild Turtle, Samix, Heq, and Sheriff. For support, we've got Adrian and Mickey at the top. Mickey's actually been getting a lot of fantasy points compared to the rest of his team. We've got Smoothie and Vander immediately after him, and then rounding out the above-average supports would be Hillisang, Mithy, Hakuo, and Wadid. Average would be Aframu, Biofrost, Kasing, and Jack Troll, and then below average would be Matt, Norskaren, Stunt, Ollie, Tagamas, Totoro, Lemonation, and Spraddle. So that's kind of like your quick and dirty tier list right there. Now I'm going to go into detail like why those people are in different tiers. And I'm also going to talk about risk and reward because that's a very important aspect with Fantasy LCS. So let's first let's talk about the matchups for the week. So week 4, these are the matchups. So you can see I've got the rank for the teams right here. I have them organized this way because it makes the equations work better. But my top team this week is Echo Fox, followed by Cloud9, followed by Team Liquid, followed by TSM, followed by 100 Thieves. And then at the 6th spot, we've got CLG. 7 is Clutch, 8 is Optic, 9 is FlyQuest, and 10 is Golden Guardians. So as far as teams that are going to do really well this week, I've got Echo Fox is going to do well. They're going up against Guardians and Team Liquid. I gave them a really high percentage to beat Guardians, and I gave them a decent percentage to beat Team Liquid, 60-40. I don't rate any matches 50-50. I always choose somebody. So the best matchup you can have is 60-40. 100 Thieves, I'm also expecting a good week out of them. They've got FlyQuest and Guardians. And then I've got Cloud9. They're going against Team Liquid and FlyQuest. I gave Cloud9 the slight edge against Team Liquid at 60-40. So this week, even though Team Liquid is a really good team, I have them at a 40% win chance for both of their matchups, which is why they're not getting a lot of fancy points this week in my book. But basically what you do is I can take these win percent chances for each of these games, and I can calculate what's their percentage chance to win for get 0 wins, 1 win, and 2 wins, and then I can basically calculate what is their weighted chance to win. Like on average, how many games would they win if you did a bunch of samples for this week. So you can see, like, for example, the best teams this week are going to average 1.5 wins this week. So if we played this week 10 times, Echo Fox would average 1.5 wins each time. So sometimes they would win 2 games, sometimes they'd win 1 game. And the way that these statistics work, you can see that a lot of times the chance to get 1 win is super freaking high. So a lot of these teams, even Echo Fox, who's got one of the best weeks this week, they've only got a 54% chance to win 2 games, and they've got a 42% chance to win 1 game. So it's a lot easier to win 1 game than it is to lose both games or to win both games. And the way you can think of this is kind of like if you're flipping a coin, and let's say you flip 2 coins, you've got a 50% chance for it to come up heads, tails, or tails, heads, but you've only got a 25% chance to get both tails or both heads. So that's why it's a lot easier for teams to get 1 win as opposed to 2 wins or 2 losses. So this kind of factors into the weighting that goes on. This factors into the risk analysis. So when I predict a team to get 1 win, that kind of pushes them lower in the risk category because it's much easier to get 1 win. But if I'm predicting 2 wins or 0 wins, then usually you see higher risk in those teams because it's harder to achieve that, essentially. So I hope that makes sense. It might be a little bit confusing, but basically what I want you guys to get out of this is that out of this assessment for who's going to win and who's going to lose for each of these matches, I can get a risk factor. And the risk factor is basically a measurement from 0 to 10. And usually it's pretty much never 0. It's pretty much always at least 1. And 1 would be low risk and 10 would be very high risk. But risk is not necessarily a bad thing. So typically when you have higher risk, you also have higher reward in fantasy LCS. So basically a better way to look at it is teams with low risk are going to have a very small variation in the amount of points that they can get. Like if I'm predicting that they're going to get 25 points and they have low risk, they might go as low as 20 points or they might go as high as 30 points, but you're not going to see that much variation in how many points they're going to score. Conversely, if I said that somebody's going to get 25 points, but they've got a 10 on their risk, that means that they could get 5 points or they could get, 50 points, essentially. It could be, a much wider spread. So if you're in kind of a position where you feel comfortable, you feel like you've got the advantage, you kind of want to tend towards more low-risk players, and if you feel like the other team is better than yours, you kind of want to tend more towards high-risk players, but it's really kind of more of an individualistic type of thing. So I'll explain how this all ties in later on, but that's kind of the start of this, is you can see who I think is going to win. The teams that are obviously in the reds and the oranges and the yellows are the teams that I think are going to do better this week, and the teams that are in the cooler colors like the blues and the purples I think are going to do worse this week. So if you guys are confused by any of this, just let me know. It's basically just a lot of math explaining how I'm quantifying risk, at least from a schedule perspective. The other way that I'm going to quantify risk is an individualistic perspective. So basically what I do is I look at each team and each player, and I'm able to assess the risk of that player. And remember, when I'm saying risk, I'm basically talking about how much deviation could we potentially see in their points for a given week. So basically what I do is I take the points that they got for a given week, and then I calculate how many points they should have gotten if they were an average player. And based off of this, I can get kind of a value score. So these are the value scores for each of these players for each week, and I can get an average value score. So you can see for like the teams tab, we've got TSM. They on average score more points than they should from if you have the TSM team. And then, for example, Optic scores more points than they should. Echo Fox scores more points than they should. Cloud9 scores more points than they should. Fnatic and G2 score more points. Even Unicorns of Love scores more points than they should on average. The other part that this ties into is I can look at the deviation between week to week. So you can basically see how much fluctuation are you seeing from a week-to-week basis. And based off of this fluctuation week to week, I can assess what the risk is for a given team or a given player. So basically, if one team always has, they get 95% of the points that they're supposed to get every single week, they'd have slightly below average points, but they'd have very low risk. So they might be a better bet, depending on your situation, than somebody who gets, 100% of the points on an average week, but they're a risk of a 10 or something like that. So these are kind of things you have to weigh. Like, for example, Unicorns of Love. Unicorns of Love gets more points than they should on average, but you can see that they're all over the map. Like week 1, they got double the points they should have. They got 200% of the points they should have. The next 2 weeks, not so good. Only 80% of the points that they should have. So they've got a very high risk of 10. You can also look at, for example, Echo Fox. So Echo Fox, the players are kind of, they'll get crazy high points, crazy low points, but in general, from the team perspective, they get about what they should. You can see they average, 114, 88, 118. So they average about 107. They've got a pretty low standard deviation. They've got a pretty low risk. So these are kind of things you can keep in mind. So we'll go through quickly kind of like some of the people that you can keep an eye on in each of these roles. So let's go on to top lane. So we can see that on average, the players that score above average points are Haunter, Darshan, Licorice, and then we've got Lorlo, Huni, Wonder, Alfari, and I think that's it. I don't think I missed anybody. But then you can also look at the risk. So for example, Alfari and Wonder, all over the map as far as their points. So they've got pretty high risk associated with them. Huni also has a very high risk associated with him because he basically had that 1 week where he went 200% on points. That said, if you look at Huni's numbers, he never scores less than 100% on his points. So even though he's got a quote-unquote high risk, it's really more of he's got a high reward associated with that risk. So that's why I would definitely try to pick up Huni if you've got him. On the converse side, we've got, for example, Lorlo. So he had he scored pretty well in the first 2 weeks, how many points he should have gotten as opposed to how many points he did get. But week 3, they dropped off the face of the earth, and he only got 6 points that week, which was 36% of the points he should have gotten. So he's also pretty high risk. But then if you're looking, for example, say at like Licorice has relatively high risk. He's kind of medium risk. Darshan, extremely low risk. You can see he's really consistent. 107%, 127%, 124%. Same with Haunter. Haunter's pretty consistent. 99%, 137%, 97%. So you can see that, while these guys may not get as many points as Huni, they also may not have as much variation as Huni from week to week. So you can kind of count on them more for guaranteed points. Moving on to jungle, you can see, like, for example, like if we go back to top, Haunter was at 111% of points. Mike Young is at 98% points. So we can basically say from this, like, Mike Young is underperforming compared to Haunter, for example. But some other people who are doing well, Svenskeren getting good points, Contracts getting good points, Dardoch getting good points, Yankos and Maxlorg having good values. I guess I shouldn't say good points. they're getting good value, meaning that they're getting more points than they're expected to for a given week. So if like a team loses both of their games and they still get, decent points, they could have a high value score, even though they might not objectively have high points like contracts, for example. Who else? We got Yankos, Maxlore, they've got good points, and then the rest of them are kind of average or below average. So those are kind of like your high value people. And as far as, risk is concerned, Maxlore and Yankos, they're kind of medium risk. Contracts probably would avoid him since he's going below average on a couple things. Dardoch's doing well, higher risk but also higher reward. And then you can see some of the guys up here, they've also got low risk associated with them. Mid lane, kind of a similar story. Bjergsen's doing well, he's doing okay. Jensen's doing really well, 119% on average. He's only had 1 week where he got less than 100%. Power of Evil doing really well, 128% of the points that he should get. And you can see that in none of the weeks he went below 100%. So, for example, this is something that you can look at. If Optic, for example, had an easy week coming up, I think they actually do have an easy week, like in week 5 or something like that. They've got a pretty good week coming up. You might want to pick up Power of Evil because he's pretty consistent with the points he gets. He's got a very low risk associated with it, and he gets a lot of points on average compared to what he should get. Phoenix obviously doing well. Fevabin doing really well. He did have that 1 week where he only got 66%, but the past 2 weeks he's been pretty consistent. So this risk score might be a little bit misleading on him, but that'll even out as we get more data, essentially. Perks, 123%. And you can see like a lot of the rest of the EU mid laners not very good from a points perspective right now. Moving on to bot lane, we've got kind of average points all the way down to Arrow. Arrow's getting good points, so yet again another person who, if Optic has a good week, you may want to pick up Arrow as well. It's looking like Arrow and Power Evil are good pickups if Optic has a favorable week. Altec obviously doing well, and then moving down to the EU side, Hajarnen's getting above average points, and Hansama's getting above average points, and they have medium risk associated with them, so definitely good pickups. And then for support, going through a fast Smoothie, 113% of points. Matt is getting above average points. Adrian's getting above average points. Hasn't gone below 100% on any of his things. Matt actually was the only person who's gotten, I think, negative points so far. So if you started Matt last week, you actually would have been better just starting somebody who didn't play. I thought that was kind of funny. Hakuo had his one bad week in week 1, but the past 2 weeks he's been doing really well. And then moving on to the EU side, Wadid and Mickey. Mickey's got really great points. Look at this. He's 133% of points with a super low risk. So he's been super consistent. So that's pretty damn good. And then besides that, not too good. What kind of surprised me by a lot of this was actually Vitality. Vitality is super hot right now, but if we go through the different tabs, you can see that most of their players do not score a lot of points. So I think that some people might be overvaluing Vitality. Like even Jizuki, like kind of like their standout player, he's scoring below average points, only 95% of the points he should be scoring right now. So that's kind of weird. Gilius, 72%, and Cabo Shard, 78%. So very strange that Vitality is scoring so few points compared to other people. So basically, what happens is I take the value that a player has associated with them, and I have algorithms that calculate how many points a person should get on average based on how many wins their team gets in a certain week, and then I compensate for how many points, how much value a player has to kind of either boost or blunt how many points they get for that week. So that kind of calculates what the average expected points a player is going to get, and then I also plug in the risk factor. So I plug in individual risk, and then I also plug in the team risk, the schedule risk, as I like to call it, on top of that to get kind of a risk score, and it's a weighted score. And what we get is this, and I think you guys will be pretty happy with this. So you can see here we've got this is the points you would expect, and then we've got the individual risk, we've got schedule risk, and then we've got our weighted risk here. And I do this for every team, every player, all the way across. So you can see if I go across this way, I've got bot lane, support, all of that stuff. So that kind of sets up this, all of these tables that I'm going to show you next. And this will be very familiar to people who have watched my videos in the past. But this is all automated. This is not me. I didn't populate this chart. This is based off of all algorithms and equations and stuff like that. So I'm actually really proud of this because I think it relatively, it's kind of accurate. I don't think it's like 100% accurate yet, but the important thing is that it kind of learns on its own, and it does it by itself, which allows me to basically have more time to do other videos, and allows it to, I don't have to spend as much time doing this. I kind of just have to make sure that it makes sense intuitively, and then I can kind of just run with it and kind of do these videos. So I'm really happy with this. Hopefully you guys like this. So basically, the horizontal axis, that's risk and reward. So I think I was wrong in the last split by having risk on one tab and reward on the other. Risk and reward are usually together. And really what we're talking about with the risk and rewards, we're talking about how much variance you can expect in a given week for a given player or a given team. So like, for example, let's take Splice. So Splice, low risk this week. So we'd expect that, like, on average, they get around this amount of points, but they might only see a tiny variation in the points that they get. But then if we go over to, say, like CLG, they're going to have slightly more of a variation in how many points they can get. And then if we go to Schalke, they're going to have even more of a variation. So it's going to get larger and larger. So you can see that higher risk, right? There's a potential that they could get really high points, or they could get really low points. It just depends on how they perform in a given week. So this is how you can kind of gauge who you want to go for in a given week. In general, I try to go for people who are above and left the line, but I kind of tend more towards kind of safe strategies. If you're feeling a little bit more risky, you can go for people who are below the line, kind of over in this area. I would try to stay away from people who are kind of down here, because then you're just going to wind up shooting yourself in the foot. Oh, actually, I noticed that my webcam is actually blocking part of this graph. So actually, the teams that are down here are Golden Guardians, Unicorns 11, Optics. So just avoid those teams. I'll cover them back up right now, and we'll just ignore them. But in general, your teams, you can see, I've already talked about kind of the tier list, but you're looking at TSM, Fnatic, Misfit, Cloud9, Echo Fox, 100 Thieves. These are all good teams, medium risk. Vitality's down here a little bit, G2, even getting down to Splice, CLG, Clutch, Schalke. Pretty much any team in this area is probably pretty good, but you want to obviously kind of stay around these teams more if you can, based on your league. Moving down to the top lane picks. So if I just center this a little bit better. Okay, so we can see, like, at the top here, we've got Huni and Alfari. So really high point scorers, and they've got the high risk and high reward associated with them. So right now, average points, I'm predicting like 47 for Huni and 41 for Alfari, but they could shoot up really high. They could shoot up into the, the 60s if they have a good week, or if they have a poor week, they could shoot down into, the 20s, or maybe even the low 30s, something around there. So huge variance in how many points these players can get. If you don't feel comfortable with that, if you want to go a little bit safer, you start coming down to like Licorice and Wonder, and then even moving further to the left, we got Hanser and Vivasachi, and then we got Soaz and Someday. Darshan's over here, low risk. He's just been very consistent week in, week out, even though CLG's been struggling. And then kind of the people you kind of want to avoid are kind of down here. So I'll move it up a little bit. So you can see like Odo, Flame, Ruin, Prophet, Zig, Smitty J, Impact, White Knight, Lorlo. Impact, you can see I have him pretty low because I'm not predicting Team Liquid to win either of their games. But if Team Liquid upsets one of these teams, he shoots up pretty high. Like he'll shoot up into like the 30 points region. So that's why he's kind of higher risk, because if Team Liquid winds up getting an upset, then boom, he's going to be up there with, you know, your Wonders and your Licorices, kind of with the amount of points that he can get. All right, jungle. You can see at the top we've got Dardoch. He's probably your best pick this week if you have him. Somebody that might be available that you might want to consider picking up would be Pride. Very high risk this week, but Schalke's got a pretty good week, and he should be able to put up some decent points. Even if they do poorly, he'll still get, you know, at least average points this week probably. If you're looking more towards the middle, you got Maxlore. Maxlore is actually pretty far away. He's got a pretty good risk reward going on. Jankos and Michael Young are kind of more like, you know, average, I guess you would call it. Svenskeren and Broxa also pretty good. Medios and Lyra, Rainover, even Xerxes if you need to. I mean, there should be enough junglers in any league that you wouldn't need to start Xerxes, but anybody kind of like in this range, I probably wouldn't start Xerxes or Gilius. That'd be kind of like my cutoff point. But yeah, try to pick the person who matches your risk and reward that you're looking for. So you can see like down here the people that I'd avoid: Anda, Memento, Santorin, Joko, Cole, Acadian, Xmithy. Contracts, I pretty much would not start any of these people this week. One person I would consider starting would be Xmithy if you think that Team Liquid's going to upset. Okay, mid lane, Phoenix. Another guy, high risk, high reward. You can see the people that are kind of in the middle are kind of the people that we already talked about with the tier list: Jensen, Bjergsen, Perks, Caps, Nuke Dug, Jizuki, Fevin, Senkux, Ryu, Huhi. Huhi's low risk, relatively high reward, might be a good pickup this week. Then people I'd probably avoid are all down here. Obviously, I already talked about Team Liquid, so Pobelter could bump up into the Fevin or Senkux range if they get an upset. Bot lane, Altec, high risk, high reward, as you see again. Hansama, also a really good pickup, a little bit less risky, but also slightly less reward. Other people, Cody Sun, Sneaky, Kabi, Hajarnan, Reckles, Upset, Zven, kind of all in the same area around here. And then most of these people I would probably try to avoid. You probably can just find a better pick. I mean, if you needed to, you could probably start one of them for your flex spot if you were in like a massive league, maybe like Apollo or Stixay, but you probably don't need to. You probably can get one of these other people as a starter. And then for support, Adrian, obviously, Mickey doing really well, Smoothie is up there doing really well. You can see Biofrost is lower on the point value, but also lower on the risk. Same with Kasing. Wadid and Aframu also kind of a little bit lower risk. Then you get kind of into that middle region. Hillsang, Mithy, Hakuo, Vander, all decent pickups this week. So you can see like quite a few of the Schalke players are relatively good picks for this week. And then the people kind of to avoid are kind of down here. So that's kind of, that's it. That's really kind of all I got to say this week. I hope you guys like that. I had a pretty good week 3. My predictions were, I think I was around like 80% overall. Really good predictions, went like 10-2 in fantasy leagues. So I mean, it's just one data point so far. I got to see if I keep doing well. But I think I finally got a little bit of a better understanding on how this split is going to go. So I'm hoping that my numbers will be a little bit more accurate this week. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. But yeah, hope you guys have a great fantasy week. Hope you guys all have a fantastic day. This is Randomonium signing off.